How are you all doing? I'm glad to be here once again to preach. We started a new series 2 weeks back, which is Harbor and Horizon, where we, as church, is a harbor for many of us. We come here, sail here, we strengthen our faith, we grow, and we go back to our own countries. And we started with book of Nehemiah. John started chapter 1. And last week I'm away with Chris to Napier and to serve the church. And I think most of the young, they were at the camp. And Bobby preached that Sunday and he continued with chapter 2 and 3. And today we're going to look at chapter 4. But before that, I want to give a little bit background intro. Let's look at 1 to 3 in short. John started with chapter 1 where we looked at Nehemiah's heart. Who was he? What is his background? We looked at his lifestyle. He was a cupbearer, and when his family, his brothers came to him, he asked them, how is Jerusalem? How is Judah? How are you doing? And his brothers replied, we were all in trouble and disgrace. Walls are broken down. We're having a difficult time. And there Nehemiah wept and fasted and prayed. And then we can look at his heart towards his homeland, towards his family, which are in ruins, and about the wall which is broken down. And then he goes to the king. He doesn't say anything, but king looked at his face and said, why is your face like that? Why are you like that? And Nehemiah again prays and said to the king, I want to go back to my home and want to rebuild the wall. And he found favor in both king and queen's eyes, and they granted him to take a leave and go and do what you want to do. And then comes chapter 2 where he goes out to Jerusalem with a bit of timber and goes out in inspection at night to the wall, and he started inspecting, oh, this gate is bad. It needs to be repaired. And he checks all the gates of the wall. He goes out at night and looks at the actual condition of the wall, and he realizes that it's hard work. In chapter 3, it was an interesting chapter for me because most of the time in Old Testament we can find a lot of names, right? And for me, names are boring. One thing, it is because they're in English and it is hard how to pronounce these names. So what I usually do is skip the names. But when I was reading this book, I don't know why I started reading the chapter 3 where you can find a lot of names, but it is a very interesting chapter. And when I started reading, I found that 15 times a phrase is repeated, which is next to him. A next to him phrase is repeated 15 times in my Bible, which I use NIV, where you can see all the different kinds of people, priests, goldsmiths, perfume makers, rulers, merchants, people from different backgrounds, towns and families comes together next to each other to rebuild the wall with Nehemiah. It was a really amazing chapter to look at how people come in together with unity to rebuild the wall. And then comes chapter 4. Chapter 4 is a little bit shorter than chapter 3. So my sermon is going to be short too. And this is an interesting chapter too because it reminds us about the Christian life. It reminds us that a believer's life is not easy. Let's start reading chapter 4. When Sanballat heard that we were rebuilding the wall, he became angry and was greatly incensed. He ridiculed the Jews in the presence of his associates. And the army of Samaria, he said, "What are these feeble Jews doing? Will they restore the wall? Will they offer sacrifices? Will they finish in a day? Can they bring the stones back to life from those heaps of rubble, burned as they are?" Tobiah the Ammonite, who was at his side, said, "What they are building, even a fox climbing on it would break down their walls of stones." Here comes the insult. Chapter 3, we looked at how people were in unity rebuilding the wall. While they are doing, everybody is next to each other, strengthening their faith. You do this, I'll do that. We can see all the gates were being repaired in chapter 3. Right in chapter 4, they were getting mocked. People are trying to persecute them. When people of God gathered together to rebuild the wall, they were not only rebuilding the physical wall, but they are working together for a greater purpose. When we go to chapter 8 and 9, we can see what's that greater purpose. The greater purpose was to worship the Lord after rebuilding the wall. We see them confessing their sins to each other, having a great time with Lord when their walls are safe. But before they could experience all of this, opposition comes. People started mocking them. And this is not just an old story, but everybody can relate this story to our lives. And this is actually very personal for me, coming from India. I have a family members who have been persecuted because of their Christian faith. I have my uncles who were jailed because of their Christian faith. Back home, we have a lot of persecution towards Christians. Whether while studying, working at a job, or in society, we face persecution. People mock us when we are Christians. If we want to do something, if we want to do something good, just like here in this chapter, people insult us, mock us. Not only in India, but this is everywhere in the world. Here in New Zealand, it can be other types of persecution. There are always opposition for a Christian, for a believer. Some insult through words, some insult through their actions. It's not just about people who don't like us. It's about a spiritual battle happening behind these things. As Paul says in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms." And these three verses in Nehemiah chapter 4 reminds us about all the darkness, all the insults they were facing. Let's continue what happened next. Verse 4. "Hear us, our God, for we are despised. Turn their insults back on their own heads. Give them over as plunder in a land of captivity. Do not cover up their guilt or blot out their sins from your sight. for they have thrown insults in the face of the builders. Nehemiah does it again. In chapter 1, when he was sad, he was weeping, he fasted and prayed. When he was beside the king, what did he do? He didn't just talk to the king, but first thing he did was to pray. And here again, they were getting mocked, they were getting insulted by these people, by the rulers. And he does it again. Here is our God. He prays. We can see his prayer life right there. It's from the beginning of the book. Whatever life throws at him, he starts praying. He deals with it first spiritually. So he prayed, and then verse 6. So we rebuilt the wall till all of it reached half its height, for the people worked with all their heart. They did not stop when people started mocking them, persecuting them. Opposition is never a time to go backwards. Charles Spurgeon once said, by perseverance the snail reached the ark. What matters is that you keep moving forward. Nehemiah did the same thing. When life throws at him the persecution, when people are mocking them, people are insulting them, he didn't stop. They didn't stop. And verse 6, we rebuilt the wall till all of it reached half its height. And the last words are very important, for the people worked with all their heart. Let's keep moving towards verse 8 now. And we can see how they build up, how they started to building the tension. And now they're plotting, the rulers and those who are against Nehemiah and the group, they started plotting evil against them. Towards Jerusalem, towards God. And the tension is rising from slowly to where they wanted to kill the people who are building the wall. What happens next? Verse 9. But we prayed to our God and posted a guard at night to meet this threat. He does it again. He prays spiritually. From there on, verses 12 and 13 and 14. Then the Jews who lived near them came and told us 10 times over, wherever you turn, they will attack us. Therefore, I stationed some of the people behind the lowest points of the wall at the exposed places, posting them by families with their swords, spears, and bows. I love this verse. They not only prayed, but they also went through a natural response of defending. And one of the preachers said this is all about awareness, situational awareness. They did not just prayed and continued, but they're also getting ready for what comes next. After I looked things over, I stood up and said to the nobles, the officials, and rest of the people, don't be afraid of them. Remember the Lord, who is great and awesome, and fight for your families, your sons and your daughters, your wives and your homes. We have to remind ourselves that God is with us. We are not alone. We are not alone in this. Whenever we wanted to fight for God, whenever we want to fight with our faith, there is always opposition. Sometimes it might be people, sometimes it might be you yourself. We have to remind ourselves that we have to be aware of the evil of the Satan that is going out. 1 Peter chapter 5 verse 8 says, "Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour." And we have all these questions in life. Why is this happening to me? Even myself, I sometimes think, why is not my life is great? Why isn't great? Why is it not peaceful? We all have these doubts and fears. And to all of those questions, when we remember this verse, be alert and of sober mind, your enemy. That means we have an enemy that is going out. And Nehemiah and the people had an enemy to oppress them, to persecute them. Verse 21, so we continued the work with half the men holding spears from the first light of dawn till the stars come out. What they basically did is they were working with one hand with all the tools and with the other hand with the weapons. They're moving forward. Isn't this a great story? Out of all fears, Nehemiah and the people don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. They don't know who will they attack them when they're building. But all of them were together in unity, wanted to defend themselves. In these verses, we see that all the officials wanted to oppress them. But we see them all serving together to rebuild that wall so that they will have a safer environment. And for us, I think our weapon for us today is faith. As this morning we heard, to trust the Lord. Faith is the weapon that we have. We may not have a gun or a sword, but through Christ, faith is our weapon. If you are someone who is facing opposition or facing oppression from someone, whether it's in your family life, whether if it's in your society, community, or the job, and we all do have underlying oppression. Remember that Christian life is not a cakewalk. And Nehemiah and the group, they're not happy as we can go out and we can safely do this work, but they know that trouble is coming. But still, my brothers and sisters, they are walking in faith together. This is an amazing verse, Romans 8:31. Paul says, if God is for us, who can be against us? Who can be against us if God is for us? That's what Nehemiah and the group did. If God is for us, no matter who will come and oppress us, no matter who will come and kill us, we are there, we are walking in faith, we will do what God has set us to do. So for today, let's remember ourselves that there is God. It's not just you. There is God with us. And we all are one in family. As we conclude this chapter, remember that Nehemiah and the group faced oppression, but they did not give up. That's why the book continues, and we can see amazing glory. And we have to wait and see what will happen next. Let's grow stronger in faith, and God is with us. Thank you.